Okay, so that's us started recording now. So today's session or this morning's session is all about helping you to stand out with your CV. All right, so whenever you're starting to apply for positions, what is it that's really going to make you stand out against, the person who's applying at the same time as you? Can I just ask, maybe I should have done this before we get started. Could you give me an idea of, are you all graduating this year? Have some of you maybe already graduated, or maybe we'll have some second years in here as well? If you just let me know in the wee chat box so I know who we'll have on the call. Okay, and while you're doing that, I'll just go through then what we're going to do in today's session. So we're going to set the context a wee bit. I'll then look at a CV section by section. We'll look at some of those golden rules for whenever you're actually compiling your CV. We'll then have a look at VMOC and how you can access some further advice. And we will then move on to look at cover letters, which are an important component to go alongside your CV. Okay, so everybody there in the chat box is saying that you're graduating this year. All right, so that's fantastic. So the context really, just when it comes to CVs, is to know that your CV is the key to unlock your career progression. And it's really, really important that you have a good CV, because without that CV being up to scratch, it will be almost impossible for you then to get shortlisted and secure the interviews that you need. All right, so the CV really is like a sales document for you. So this is the first thing that an employer in many cases will get the information relating to you. It's the first thing that they're going to be able to make a decision on. So you need to make sure that your CV is to the best possible standard that it could be. All right. And I know from yesterday's session, for those of you who were able to go to the Careers Cafe, one of the employers there was representing Kanos, and she said the exact same thing, although she said your CV is like a brochure, and reflected on an example of if you're going on holiday, if you're buying a car, anything like that, you want to read a brochure about it before you make the decision. So that's what an employer wants from your CV. All right, so it's your sales document, it's your brochure, whatever way you want to look at it, because the employers want the best person, okay, and that's all they want. All right, and what we always find is that the best person, the best candidate, doesn't have a CV that's substandard. All right, they do always have a really good, exceptional CV. So just some questions for you then. Can you let me know, do you have an up-to-date CV? And if you do, how confident do you feel about your CV? Would you be happy enough to submit that now for any application, or do you think there's a bit of work to be done on it? Okay. Saeed, do you want to speak? Do you want to put your microphone on?
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for this section. So yes, well, I actually have, should I say, an up-to-date CV, but I'm not confident about the format because I know that different countries have different, formats at the end of the day, and I
Yes.
think mine is somewhat, like 3 pages. I mean, I managed to squeeze all my experience because I have over 7 years experience, work
Yes.
experience. So I actually managed to squeeze that in, and I still feel like I need
Okay.
more space. So I think that's where I need the clarity,
Okay.
and also industry specific CV as well, you know.
Okay, okay. So hopefully from what I will cover in today's session, we are going to go through the different sections that should be included and format and what should be, what the content should look like there as well. So hopefully by the end of today's session, you will have some answers to that, okay? But if you're looking for a more tailored, sort of industry-specific CV, it may be that we need to refer you on then to get an appointment with an employability advisor to look at your CV just, on an individual basis. But we can cover that again towards the end and see if you feel that you need any further help. All right. Okay. So anybody else want to let me know about your status with a CV? Do you have one and how confident you feel about it? Say, don't worry, you don't have to put your microphone on. You can just use the chat box. Okay, so Sarah, it's not quite up to date. Okay. Updated my CV recently, but I'm trying to apply for jobs in a new area. So you're trying to change it. Okay. And this is very common at this stage whenever you are just about to leave university, where you have a CV, maybe you've developed your CV as part of your application for placement, but you're now trying to update it and bring it to that sort of graduate level. All right, so that's great. So you all seem to be in the same position here where you maybe have a CV, but you're looking for a few hints and tips on how to get that up to date. So we'll just move on then. Thanks so much for all of your comments there.
Hello, sorry.
Okay, yep,
Can I
go
say
ahead.
at one point? Yeah. Mohammed is talking. Sorry for my delay in joining the meeting. Just one point about my CV is that, currently I'm trying to looking for some job. I'm PhD student, at the last year. But the issue is that, sometimes I'm wondering the number of the page of the CV, what is important for the industry side and in the academic side as well or no. For example, I have had about 7 pages on my CV, but I then I wanted, to concise that to the 2 page for the industry and 3 page for the academic. Are you, do you agree with this policy? The number of the page should be 2 page and 3 page for in this case?
Yeah, so for an industry CV, okay, so for applying for roles within industry, you would definitely be looking at no longer than 2 pages.
Yeah,
And if you're going for an academic CV to work in academia, we would, you can go on to a 3rd page then, because obviously there's a wee bit more that would need to be included. So in today's session, what we're going to focus on would be the industry CV. Okay.
yeah, good.
And if you did need further help then with an academic CV, we could again refer you on to an employability advisor. Is that all
Thank
right?
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, no worries at all. All right, so just basically, the format of your CV. So your CV needs to be consistent in layout. So when we're talking about layout, what we're talking about there would be your font size, your heading styles, all of those sorts of things. Should be no longer, as I've just said, than 2 pages in length. And this is very specific to industry CV. So if you're applying for a position, if you are applying for an academic role, it would be slightly different, but that would be something that we would cover on an individual basis. And your CV should also have a good balance of text and space. So I know that it's very difficult to get a lot of your information onto 2 pages. It seems like a bit of a squeeze in some cases, but it is so important that you do that. But it's also very important that it's not all crammed onto 2 pages, which would make it very difficult to read. But likewise, we don't want to see lots and lots of white space that's been unused. All right, so it's just about getting a good balance of text and space. And I do have sort of a sample that I will show to you before we finish up today's session. So, it is your CV. What we will do today is to give you advice and guidance on what should be included, what is very important to have in your CV, but feel free to play around with that yourself, okay? So if you want to make it look slightly different, that's okay. It is your document at the end of the day, but it's so important that the content is there. So the layout of your CV and the content, you should include these sections, okay? So these sections should be on your CV. You have to have your personal information. You have a personal profile or a career objective. You have your education, your work experience, a skills profile, interests and achievements, and in your references or your referees. Now, don't worry, I'm going to go through each of these, okay, individually and just give you a bit more information about the content for each of those sections. But if I was to receive a CV from any of our students or soon-to-be graduates, I would expect that all of these sections would be there on your 2-page document. Okay. So I don't have a slide about personal details because, it is what it is. So we need to have your name at the top of the page. I normally say to center it and have it as a bit of a title. Underneath your name, you need to have your contact address, a contact telephone number, a contact email address, and if you do have a URL for a LinkedIn profile or anything like that, you can add it in as well. If you are an international student, it could be useful to put there about your visa status so that an employer would know, if you do have eligibility to work and what that status is. All right. In your personal information, we don't want to have any date of birth. Okay, that's not needed. We don't want national insurance number. We don't need, anything too too personal about your life. It really needs to be contact information. All right. We don't also put curriculum vitae as the title of your CV because that's not needed. As I say, if you just have your name centered at the top, that would do as a heading. Underneath your personal information then, what we move into is a very short paragraph, which is called a personal profile. Sometimes it's called a career objective. All right. I actually don't mind what you call it as long as you have this section on your CV. And what this is, as I've said, is a very, very short paragraph or summary. And it details what you can bring to the job or the company. And we would usually say no longer than about 5 or 6 lines. All right, so it is a very, very concise paragraph. So it sits at the very top, it comes in underneath your personal information. And this is your first opportunity to really sell yourself to an employer and to start to highlight some of the relevant skills or experiences that you already have. And this is your opportunity to really convince recruiters that you're a good fit, okay? And really entice them into reading on and finding out more about you in your CV. Always keep it factual and to the point. So you don't need to go into big examples, okay? It can just be highlighting, okay? Highlighting skills, highlighting experiences. And if you are struggling with what to write in this section, you could break it into 3 sort of mini sections. So firstly, introducing yourself and telling the employer who you are and the type of work you're looking for. Moving on then to telling them what you can offer. All right, so this is where you could talk about your skills or experience. And for that, it would be very important to reflect upon what the employer is looking for. So having a look at the essential and desirable criteria for the post and maybe pulling out some of the keywords that they have used and bringing that back into your CV. And then just concluding by a brief statement of your career goals or career aspirations. All right, so say very brief, 5 or 6 lines. If you go to 7 lines, I'm not going to tell anybody, to go back and rewrite it, but we don't want to say, half a page contained within your personal profile. All right, so any questions on that? Oh, okay, all quiet. As I say, feel free to just put any questions into the chat box or raise your hand if you want me to stop. Okay, so underneath the personal profile or career objective, we would then move into education and qualifications. And this is your opportunity just to list everything you have, okay, from studying your degree and back towards A levels or GCSEs or equivalents. The education qualifications section should be written in reverse chronological order. So that means most recent first. So you would start with your university degree that you're just completing. You would then move back to the qualification that brought you to university and then back, as I say, towards GCSEs. Now, I know that that's very specific to sort of the UK system, but if you are an international student, it would be no further back than, sort of GCSE equivalents. And for this, the layout would be giving the full dates of study. So from when you first started university to when your course is due to end, giving Ulster University as the institution, giving the full title of your degree. You can, at this stage, you probably do already have your degree classification. So you can either give expected if you're still waiting or give your degree classification. And then you would list some of the notable modules that you have studied as part of that degree. All right. Now, if you've just completed your undergraduate degree, obviously we don't want you to list 3 years worth of modules. But what I would say is to maybe pull out some of the more relevant modules, if there are some that are more relevant to the job that you're applying to. All right. So you could pull out maybe 6 or 8, just depending on how you feel about that. Within your section about your degree, it's good also then to list any other notable achievements, awards, or projects. So if you have completed a dissertation, you can provide details there about the title of your dissertation. If you have completed, for example, the EDGE Award as part of your undergraduate studies, so that's our skills award, you can put details in here as well, okay, about the activities that you've completed, and obviously you'll be receiving those certificates at graduation. So all of that's very important. So full details of the degree that you've been studying. Moving back then to the the qualification that brought you to university. So if we're talking about A-levels, we would list our A-level subjects with the appropriate grades beside them. Again, you're given the dates of study, the institution where you gained those qualifications, and then say the actual subjects, and then moving back towards GCSEs or equivalent as well. So what I would say about GCSEs, you do still need to give the dates, you do still need to give the institution, but you don't need to list all of your GCSEs, because I know in many cases you can have studied maybe 10 subjects. So we don't want you to list 10 different subjects and 10 different grades. It's okay just to compile those together and say, you know, a brief sentence such as 10 GCSEs, grades A to C or B to D, or whatever your grade range might have been. And then maybe just pulling out, you know, to include maths and English and what your individual grades would have been there. Because if an employer is going to go back and look at GCSEs, it probably will be for your English and your maths, okay, so your numeracy and your literacy skills. All right, so education, as I say, in reverse chronological order, giving dates, institution, and the qualifications that you have received in each of those. All right. Moving on then, the next section that we'll talk about would be your work experience section. Again, this should be in reverse chronological order, so most recent first. You should give the dates of employment. Okay, so if you're still employed, you know, you might want to say September 2021 to present. Give the name of your organization or the company that you're working for. You don't need to give address or anything. It just needs to be the name of the organization. I'll just come back to that wee question in a wee second once I finish this wee bit, okay? You need to give full details of your job role, but what I would say here is you always need to use bullet points. This is a very important thing to take from this section. Your job role needs to be described in bullet points as opposed to paragraphs. The only paragraph that I really want to see on your CV would be that personal profile or career objective at the top. Everything else should be in bullet format. It makes it easier to read. It keeps it nice and clear and legible. And when you are writing your bullet paragraph or your bullet points, we always want you to use active words to highlight your strengths and skills. So for example, organized, created, built, managed, planned, okay? Avoid using the word I at the beginning of your bullet points, okay? Because it doesn't create much impact. So if you can start each of your bullet points with a good action word, then that definitely creates impact for the reader. And within those bullets, what we want you to do then is to outline what you did, the key responsibilities, and any notable achievements. Okay, so we want to know what you did. Okay, what were your successes? If it's relevant, you can mention any sort of technical skills or equipment that you've been using. Okay, so that's probably more relevant to certain subject areas. And within your work experience, you can include details of any placements you've taken part in, any part-time work, maybe any vacation schemes you've taken part in, and again, you can add in some voluntary work as well. And it can also be broken down into relevant work experience and additional work experience. So if you have, for example, done placement and that placement is still relevant to the job that you're going to be applying to, I would do relevant work experience first of all, give details of your placement, and then within additional work experience, maybe talk about part-time jobs or voluntary roles that perhaps aren't completely relevant to what you're doing at the minute. All right. So that's work experience. I think the key takeaway from this section is that it needs to be in bullet points. You need to use active words, and you need to make sure that you're describing what you did. Okay, so the employer can actually see what you were responsible for and what your achievements were. All right. So I'm just going to pop back in now. There was a couple of questions here just to do with the education and qualifications. So international student, do you need to show your, yes, you would need to show your results, okay. So that would be definitely, you could put that in. And Mohammed, your GPA is 17 is equivalent to a first class or a 2-1. I actually don't know the answer to that, okay. I don't know what the equivalency there would be for the GPA. I'll have to have a wee think about that to see who could help with that, Mohammed. So I'm just going to park that question for now, okay, until the end. So I'll get back to you on that one. All right. Yes, I know what it means, but I just don't know the the, how that would convert across. All right. So we'll just I'll have to figure out at the end who we could point you to for that one. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, it would probably be an academic member of staff, Mohammed, that you'll need to speak to about that one. All right, but we'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so work experience, as I say, this is how we would normally lay it out. As I say, we can do relevant and additional, and the most important thing is how you write those bullet points and the content that you have in there. Probably, a word of sort of advice here as well. We do have a lot of students who maybe haven't done placement, okay, who then maybe feel that they don't have relevant work experience, and you're not too sure whether your part-time job, maybe in hospitality or in retail, should actually go onto your CV. We would say that you should include those types of roles, okay, because what they're demonstrating, although they're not maybe relevant to maybe, a finance role that you're going to be applying to, or a business role that you're applying to, or a marketing role, what they're going to demonstrate are some of those key transferable skills and experiences that our employers are looking for. Okay, so it's still really, really important to put them onto your CV. So don't just leave something off because you think it isn't relevant. There are other ways in which you can demonstrate skills and experiences even from part-time jobs. All right. Moving on then is the skills profile. And within the skills profile, what we want you to do is to mention a number of transferable skills. Okay, so these aren't skills that you're learning as part of your degree. These are things like communication, teamwork, leadership skills, problem solving skills, organizational skills, time management, all of those types of things. And the reason you have this section on your CV is because the employers are telling us that what they're looking for, for a good sort of well-rounded graduate would be, your degree, really, really important. Some type of work experience. So we've just had work experience as our last section there, plus a range of transferable skills. All right, so that's the little formula. So your degree plus work experience plus transferable skills. So you'll see then we have a section for each of those on your CV. So this skills profile is all about transferable skills. And what you need to do is to identify a transferable skill. And underneath that, then you would provide evidence of how you have developed that particular skill. Okay. And what we'll say here is to take your lead from the job description and the employer requirements. So for anybody who has already started to, sorry, whoever's just writing on the slides there, could I ask you just not to maybe do that? Thank you. So what we'll say is to take your lead from the employer requirements. And for anybody who has already started to apply or has been looking for roles already, that's okay, don't worry. What you'll notice is within the essential criteria, they will ask maybe for a certain degree discipline. They might ask for, a certain type of experience, but they may then also have a list of, you must be a good team worker, you must be able to communicate effectively. Okay, so when they start to list skills, they are the skills then that should be here on your CV. All right, and what that means is that as they're shortlisting against that essential criteria, they can clearly see that you have that skill and how you have developed that particular skill. All right, so your evidence for these skills can come from, study. They can come from any placements, part-time jobs. They can also come from extracurricular activities, okay, or any other social sort of aspects of your life, okay? So it doesn't all have to be about the job that you're doing, and it doesn't all have to be about your academic studies. It can bring in a range of different examples. And I always think it's nice to have a range of examples because it keeps it interesting for the reader, that they're not always, just listening or reading about the same things over and over again. All right. Let's have a look. So Mohammed, you're talking about which section should you put experience in terms of workshop organizing, logistics, or technical support? Were they as part of a job? Were you doing those? Or in what context were you doing workshop organizing?
Sorry, pardon?
So when you're talking about those different, so workshop organizing, logistics, and technical support, were you carrying them out as part of a job role, or was it as part of your studies?
Studies, we have some bookshop in the university. Yeah, we have organized that in terms of technical support, something like that, organizing.
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit for me. What did you say? So as part of university and you were doing what?
Apologize for the background noisy.
No, you're
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we have had some workshop in the university, last month, for example, and we participate in that workshop and supporting technical support and logistics, something like that.
Okay, so they could possibly fall within your work experience. Would they been like a voluntary role?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would list that as a voluntary role and give details of what you
Uh-huh.
did as part of the organization for those, okay?
Yeah, we can have a volunteer section. Good.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
just one more question. Is it about part-time job you mentioned here should be in the skill sections or in the what? How
No,
about we
so
can? Yeah.
when you're writing about your part-time job and your role and your responsibilities, that should be within the work experience. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about our skills and how you have
Good. Good. Good.
developed a particular
Perfect.
transferable skill, you can still use an example from your part-time job.
Absolutely right. Thank you. Good. 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 Thank you. Right.
Okay. Um, okay. How would one present the evidence from can it study and work placement? So I'm just reading this comment. Evidence from.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, I'm just wondering how one can present. I mean, because when you have like a skills profile,
Uh-huh.
you can show perhaps maybe project management skill right now, right?
Yeah.
So how do you show the evidence? Could it be, for example, if you put I have project management skills, then could it be in form of an hyphen, or how do you
Okay.
really show the evidence? Like hyphen, or
Yeah.
maybe
So
yeah.
yeah, so I'm going to show you an example of a CV, okay, at the end, and it'll show you how that should be laid out in the document. Is that okay?
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it doesn't answer your question whenever I show it, we can certainly revisit that. Okay. All right. Okay, so after work experience, you would then move on to interests and achievements. So within the interests and achievements section, what you would need to do is to list anything else that could strengthen your application. So you can mention extracurricular activities and interests, and you can, provide details of any other achievements or prizes that you haven't maybe already included within your education section. So maybe you've done something else within university that hasn't actually formed part of your degree, or perhaps you've received a prize or an award outside of university, you can definitely put that in. Voluntary work you can put in here. Now, word of warning, because I've also talked about voluntary work within your work experience section. If we're talking about voluntary work in terms of that you've been doing it over a period of time, that would then go into your work experience. If voluntary work has been maybe one day of fundraising, okay, so maybe you've been out and you've done maybe a marathon, or you've gone out and done a bit of charity work, but it's just been one off where you've just raised a sum of money, I would include that here within your interests and achievements as something additional. So if it's going to go into your work experience, as I say, it needs to be something that's been done over a period of time where you actually have enough to write about. But if you're going to just highlight that maybe you've been fundraising, or just doing a bit of charity work on a one-off basis, you could put it here. All right. And then any other experience that you feel would be relevant to your sector. And then after interests and achievements, you can then put in your referees. Okay, so we do recommend that if you do have space, you would list full details for your references. Okay, if you don't have space, then you can just write available on request. So if you are given full details, we recommend that you give one academic reference and one work related. You give their full name, title, address, telephone number, and email, and that you always get permission and let them know that you're going to be using their name. All right, and that's just a courtesy thing, okay, and just so that they're prepared and ready to give you a really good reference. Mohammed, there, what about body memberships? Yep, so that would fall under other experiences relevant to your sector. So that would definitely become in underneath the interests and achievements section. All right, so that any memberships would come in there. All right, so that brings us down to references. Okay. I'm not going to actually do this little exercise with you, but what I'm going to do is swap my screen and just show you an example of a CV and what it should be laid out like. So bear with me just while I swap around. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, Mohammed, I was just saying any body memberships would go in under your interests and achievements because they're additional experiences relevant to your sector. Okay, Saeed, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, well, I guess you might still respond to that probably in the next session, but I'm just wondering how one can fit in, years of experience into 2 pages. That's a bit of a concern for me, Yeah, but I
Yeah,
guess in the samples you're going to present, probably I'll see something. I'll see.
yeah, I think what we need to say there is that when you do come from a background where you do have many years of experience, it is very difficult. It's about, if experience is still relevant, at this point, because obviously sectors and industries do change significantly. So, it's thinking about maybe is the experience that you had 7 years ago as relevant as the one that you have, most recently, and to see whether or not you need to take some information perhaps away from the ones that were further in the past and make more of the ones that you've been doing more recently. But that would probably be, you probably would need to have a one-to-one with one of the employability advisors to look at your CV specifically.
Okay, all right, yeah, I guess that works. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this CV up here. Okay, so this is very small. Let me see if I can get this to come up a wee bit. Can everybody sort of see that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, no worries. So as I say, this is a very, very sort of rough sample. All right, so don't worry too much about the wording in it. But what I wanted to show you was just what it should look like on paper. So as you see at the beginning there, so the name at the top, okay, it's bolded, it's been made to look like a bit of a heading. Personally, I would center it, but it's okay as it is here on this. So you'll see there about the contact details and the LinkedIn profile as well. Then we move on to the personal profile or the career objectives. So you'll see a very short paragraph. And again, it's just about outlining who you are, what you're looking for, and some of the key skills and experiences that you could bring. Okay, moving down, our education and qualifications. So you'll see we've started with the degree. Now, this is a sample of a placement application. So they have listed both years of modules, but I've said to you there that you should then obviously trim that back, and then you can put in other details such as Edge Award. You can put in examples maybe of your dissertation and things like that. And then moving down, then you'll see that this particular example does A levels and GCSEs, studied at the same school. So it's okay just to have them grouped together under the one set of dates and institution. Okay, so education, work experience. Okay, so again, this is really just for layout. So we have the title, we have your dates, we have who you worked for, and the name of the title, sorry, of the role that you were performing. And then you'll see the example of bullet points. All right, and you'll see that each of these bullet points are starting with good, strong, active words. All right, so you'll see that we're not talking in that sort of first person I at any stage. All right. And then, as I say, the second experience, then we're moving back, demonstrating that it should be in reverse chronological order. There's a section here on volunteering. All right, again, it's falling within work experience. So it should have your dates, where you were volunteering, and what that was for. And again, bullet points, just outlining what you were doing. All right. Skills profile, apologies, because this is now run on to the second page. The skills profile. Okay, so you can see there, this one is an example of somebody who's completed a technical subject. So they have wanted to talk about their computing skills. So you'll see the example of listing your skill and then listing an example of how you have developed that particular skill in underneath. Okay, so you'll see teamwork, leadership, problem solving, communication. These are all transferable skills. say computing, if you are from a computing background, you may wish to talk specifically about some of those technical skills in there. All right. But you'll see that these examples are actually demonstrating how you have developed those skills. We don't want you just to say, I communicate as part of my part-time job. I want to know how you communicate. Okay, if you're talking about problem solving, how did you solve that problem? All right. Interests and achievements then underneath, you'll see it's just again in a short bullet list. Okay, anything that will enhance your CV. And then references at the very end. Okay, so that would be the typical layout. All right. As I say, we have had questions there about, having a wee bit more work experience, but in the main part, when you're just about to graduate from university, it shouldn't be any issue getting 2 pages for your CV, okay? If you do have any sort of queries or if you have any concerns about stripping it back and getting it onto 2 pages, we would then need to look at getting an appointment with an employability advisor for that. All right. So I'm just going to bring myself back. Okay, so key thing then always, it's okay for me to talk about, have these sections, have this content, have it in this particular order, but the key thing for your CV is about targeting it. All right, and I've talked about this at different stages here throughout my presentation already. Always use the job description, always use the person specification, and always target it to what the employer is looking for. All right, so the job description is going to give you information about the job, so what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis. It might include some details about, what skills you might be using, what qualifications you might need, maybe some of those personal qualities that might be required as part of that job. But the personal spec is where you'll really see, the essential criteria. You must have these things to be shortlisted to get into the interview room. So I would rely heavily on that, okay? They will list the skills, they will list the qualities, they will list the qualifications or experiences that they are looking for in order to shortlist you. So you must make sure that everything that's on that essential criteria is demonstrated and is visible in your CV, all right? We've got another, should all the sections be customized for, yeah, so Mohammed, the CV, there are certain sections which are easily customized, okay? So your personal profile most definitely can be customized. Your education, it may be that some of the modules might be more relevant for some positions, okay? You might find that the modules you're listing are relevant for everything, so you might not need to change that each and every time. Your work experience, it's about pulling out the information that an employer would be able to say that transfers to a certain part of the job you're applying to. Your skills should always be tailored because no two employer will ask for the same set of skills. All right. Your interests and achievements aren't really going to be tailored, and then your references obviously would stay the same. So the key sections that you might be looking at would be the personal profile, the work experience, and the skills. All right. But it is so, so important. Don't just rehash the same CV over and over again to different employers. All right, because you'll find that you won't be successful. Okay, and this is just an example of, those essential and desirable criteria as they would be listed on a job description. So you'll see there the essential criteria for this particular post, and they're asking for a bit of experience. They're asking, the ability to manage complex presentations, to be able to deliver treatment, to be able to, do certain things. They have desirable criteria. They've also listed their essential skills. All right, so being able to prioritize and organize, to be able to work as part of a team, all of those sorts of things. So if I was applying for this particular role, I would most definitely be relying heavily on what is listed here and making sure that my CV, as much as possible, demonstrates what's written on this page. All right, so say that's just an example. It won't apply to everybody because everybody's subjects are different. Okay. You do still, even though you are just about to graduate, you will still have access to VMOC for a period of time. So if you are developing your CV, we would really recommend that you upload a copy of that into VMOC and that you would then be able to receive instantaneous feedback on your CV, and it'll also give you some hints and tips about how to improve that, okay? And I'm just typing the URL here, Tokens. employability/tools. Okay, and just giving you there the link to the website where you'll then be able to access VMOC. All right, so it's just within the tools section. But a really, really good piece of software there. You can upload your CV, as it gives instantaneous, personalized feedback, and it'll tell you how to improve and bring your CV just up to the next level. All right. And then you can, as I say, you can also then access some expert advice from employability advisors. So we do have an employability hub on each campus, 2 employability advisors for each campus. So feel free to book an appointment. You can do that at any stage, or you can email into careers@ulster.ac.uk to request an appointment or some assistance as well. And I'll just put in, sorry, 2 seconds. I'm going to type in Ulster. Sorry, I can't type and speak at the same time. So I'm just putting into the chat box there. That's the link for booking advice appointments. All right, so if you just click on that, you'll be able to see all of the appointments available in your own campus, and you just book a time that is suitable for you. Okay, so that brings me to the end of CVs. I know we're sort of approaching the end of our time. I do still need to go through covering letters, but does anybody have any other questions about CVs? Okay, perfect. So I'll move on quickly then with this. Okay, great, Courtney, thank you. And as I say, I'll stay on at the end if anybody does want to speak to me a wee bit further about it. Okay, so writing the perfect cover letter. All right. So what is a covering letter? All right, and this might sound, like a pretty basic question, but it is very, very complex. Sometimes people do not know what should be in a covering letter or what makes a good cover letter. So it's really important that we go through these few slides, because alongside your CV, you should always submit a covering letter, all right, which is a brief 1-page document, and it'll help you to expand a wee bit more on some of the things that you're saying in your CV, all right? It would highlight your motivations for applying for the post, and it'll also tell the organisation or the employer why you want to work with them, all right? And it showcases a wee bit of your personality and some of your values as well. So that's just what a cover letter is. But a compelling cover letter, so one that's really going to grab the attention of the employer or the reader, is one that answers 2 basic questions. Why you and why them? All right, so we don't want to see a covering letter that just says, please see attached my CV for the post of X, Y, or Z. Okay, we want you to go into detail so that they can read why you're good for that post and why you want to work for them. All right, so when you're talking about why you, what you should do is focus their attention, sorry, on the most relevant and compelling qualifications, okay, and experiences. What value will you actually bring to that organization? Okay, we don't want you to talk about what you can get from it or what you will gain. It's what you can bring. How can you fit with the job that has been advertised? All right. When you're talking about them, it's really important that you do include a sentence or I would say a full paragraph, okay, on why you want to work for that organization. Talk about them, all right? Make sure that you match their tone, okay? So if it's corporate, you'll obviously be a bit more formal, all right? If it's marketing, you might be a bit less formal, all right? So always match the tone of the company that you're applying to, but always tell them why you want to work for them. How can you see yourself working for them? What is it that's really attracted you to them? Do you fit with their company values? Have they worked on projects or assignments in the past that you've really had an interest in and would love to be involved in the future? All right. What we don't want you to do is just rehash wording from their website. Make it personal. What attracts you to them? All right. And when we're talking about the tone and things like that, just remember, you do always need to use that professional voice. So don't be using slang and abbreviation and things like that. It should be written as a formal letter. All right, so a letter that comes to you in the post, maybe from an organization. Okay, so you'll have your dates, your addresses, your formal greeting, your letter, and then formal ending as well. And we'll go through the sections in a wee section, or wee second. So cover letters are just about, they're all about giving information, but if it's only about you, then it's sort of dry and it's not really very nice to read. But actually, if you can make that connection between you and them, that really does make them sit up and think, oh, here we go, let me find out a wee bit more about this person. And I really, really, really want to see their CV as well. So making that connection is so important. So paragraph by paragraph, this is what should be included. So say it's the formal standard layout. So you would have your address blocks at the top with your date. You'll have a formal greeting, all right? So dear, and what we'll say is always write or always try to write to a named person. So try to avoid to whom it may concern or dear sir, madam. So if you can, get dear Mrs. Employer or dear whoever that might be, that's a really good way to start your letter. Make sure that you state the position that you're applying for, where you found out about it. Okay, name drop if you have to. So maybe you've been referred by somebody from their company. Maybe you were speaking to somebody at a fair. Maybe you were speaking to somebody in university. So it's okay to say that you were speaking to such and they have told you about this opportunity. Okay, and always close that then with a hook. Academic introduction then, so state in the university that you're attending, what is your degree, any relevant classes or modules that you've completed, and any other relevant academic information that you think at this stage would be important for this application. Moving on then to the body paragraph, and this is where you get to really connect your skills, okay, your characteristics, your experiences, and your qualifications, all right? And you can match that to the company, you can match that to the job. And this is also where you highlight why you want to work for this particular organization too. Okay, so the who, why you're working for them, why you're applying for them, why you want to, put in this application. So you're answering those key questions from before, why you and why them. And then you move on to your conclusion, okay? And this is really where you get to reaffirm your interest in the position and the company. Be sure that you do say that you're looking forward to discussing further at interview, okay? And make sure that you end your letter formally. All right, so yours sincerely, yours faithfully, but making sure you're using the correct formal closing. So it's a greeting and an opening paragraph, bit about your academics, bit about your skills, experiences, and qualifications and how they match the role, a bit about why you want to work for that particular company or organization, and then your conclusion and formal closing. All right, and that is it. So it is one-page document. The space that you actually have to write is maybe a half a page because you have to take consideration your address blocks and things at the top. So it is quite a concise letter. And what I would say is don't ever talk about anything in your covering letter that you don't then talk about in your CV. All right, if you mention a skill or an experience, you need to make sure that's also in your CV so it all matches up and it's all nice and cohesive. So things to remember, the topic, so I've said these words so many times, why you, why them, all right? Highlighting your experiences, showcasing that you're the best candidate and emphasizing your interest in their organization. The style, it should be narrative, it should match the tone of the organization and should always be professional. No longer than one page and around 3 to 5 paragraphs. And always keep it consistent with your CV. So use the same font, use the same layout, okay? And then tailoring, so you should always tailor and always customize for every single position. And that is very, very important. So in the same way that you would customize your CV, we would do the same thing with the covering letter. So if you're talking about skills and experiences, it should be the skills and experiences that the company have asked for. All right. So again, it's nearly like a job, getting a job, but there is quite a bit of work that needs to be done each time you make an application. And say, don't just sort of think, I have a CV, I have a covering letter. They're both very generic. I'll send them in. That's not going to work. Okay. To be competitive, you do always need to tailor. All right. You need to showcase how you match those particular roles. All right. And for anybody who needs a wee bit of help then with building a cover letter, we do have a tool. So again, the website's just here. So it's the tools section. Go into what's called the Abintegro career platform, and you'll see cover letter builder in there as well. So you will be able to go in and use that as well because it's just on our website. All right. There was a wee question, bear with me, let me just see. So Mohammed, you should be able to download a copy of my slides at the minute. Just at the very top of your screen, there's a little arrow. You should be able to download. Okay, so anybody, feel free to take a copy of these. It's not a problem. All right, so that's just the tool that you can use online for developing a covering letter. But if you are connecting with an employability advisor about your CV, it might also be beneficial maybe to have your cover letter ready and get that reviewed at the same time as well. Okay, so again, it's something that an employability advisor could go over with you. All right, now I'm just going to stop recording at the minute.